Hey, Dennis Mattern here with the Complete Advisor. So happy you're joining me. Today's episode, we are going to take a look at the impact that the next presidential election could have on your clients as it relates to taxation, as it relates to new legislation, and we're going to pose some questions to Becky Swansburg. Becky is a Washington insider, and what makes Becky so very special is she is an expert when it comes to life insurance, when it comes to tax policy, and she also has been a Washington insider. So we're going to ask her, what does it mean to our clients if Biden is reelected? What does it mean to our clients if Trump is reelected? And lastly, what does it mean to our clients if a third-party candidate happened to win the election? You want to check this out. It could impact you. It could impact your clients. Let's take a listen. So lucky because we are joined by Becky Swansburg. Becky, welcome.
Thanks for having me as always.
I'm going to just throw your bona fides out there, and you're going to have to correct me on one thing that I always get wrong. I always forget which Bush White House you worked in.
W number one, first administration for George W. Bush.
And that's Herbert Walker, right?
Yeah.
All right. See, I know my Bushes. World War II fighter pilot.
Nope. Other one, son.
Oh, the son. Okay, so I get him backwards.
This is the great baseball loving George W. Bush.
Gotcha.
9/11 bullhorn president.
Gotcha. Okay. So you were in that White House. So not only has Becky been, you're a Washington insider. So you've worked on Capitol Hill for years. You follow I would dare say that you are an expert when it comes to taxation, and you are brilliant when it comes to life insurance. So bona fides established.
Thank you.
Okay. So scenarios. We've had you on a couple times talking about, what's going on in Washington. How is it going to affect the American, the regular man, woman on the street, as it goes for savings, as it goes towards taxation. So I've got 3 different scenarios.
Let's get into it.
That I want to run through. So we're sitting here in April, so we do have some time. So our predictions, we're gonna talk about them as best we can, because who knows what's going to happen in the next couple months. So impact for the American saver, the American retiree, if Biden wins.
All right, we get a second Biden administration. I think the big thing to watch for is a continuation of this attack on IRAs, 401ks, 403bs with high account balances. So we've heard consistently, it was in the president's State of the Union. It was just in his 2025 budget proposal. Language and some legislative initiatives around limiting the total amount that an American can save tax deferred. Now, obviously that benefits the government. The government wants that tax revenue. We can't defer it forever. So we've seen some proposals for new required minimum distributions that would be applicable at any age if an IRA or 401k account balance reached a total level for retirement assets.
Have we had that before?
Not yet, no.
Yikers.
So this would be our first. So if we have Biden administration number 2, I think the number one thing to watch is just this shifting attitude on retirement accounts. We have heard the president say time and time again, he believes tax-deferred savings is for middle-class Americans. It's being abused by upper middle class and wealthy Americans. They want to kind of rewrite the narrative in America to really make the tax benefits for saving for retirement only for the middle class.
Okay, so what should people be watching for? Let's pretend Trump won.
So a second Trump administration. We're in kind of this interesting election where we could have a second administration for either candidate. Second Trump administration, the big question on my mind is, do we get an extension of the Trump tax cuts?
Yes, TCJA.
TCJA, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. If you remember, 2017 was passed. All of those individual income tax bracket reductions and, of course, the estate tax exemptions, those all expire in 2025, which means that unless they get extended, 2026, all those rates go back to their older, higher rates. I could see a second Trump administration, if we make a real push to extend those tax cuts, that gives savers a lot more of a runway to convert assets at these lower rates. So if we have savers that have an IRA and they're thinking about doing a Roth conversion or converting into tax-free IUL, right now they've got a really limited window to do that. If those tax cuts are expired, these artificially low tax bracket rates get to continue for a few more years, and that gives us more breathing room to get more of those assets if they're extended.
Now, so with your experience in Washington, would it be likely that they would be extended, or would they sunset and then something new would come out with a new catchy title?
So if this were a new president coming into office, I would say 100% let him sunset, do something new. I could make an argument with the second Trump administration for either. On one hand, new is always sexy, and it kind of lets you give different benefits to different groups. That builds loyalty within our government system. But there is something a little poetic justice about coming back, beating the guy that has said time and time again, no way we are extending these cuts. They are just helping wealthy Americans. Get rid of them. Trump wins again. I could see an argument where he just wants to say, put it to you, Biden, you were going to take this away from the American people. I'm keeping it low, not going anywhere.
There you go. Okay, third scenario then. Third scenario.
Nuclear scenario.
So this one is one. Let's just say that neither of them. Let's say either the scenario is that neither of them wins, which is either because the rarest of rare, the thing that's never happened, a third-party candidate wins, which would be crazy, or these guys are both pretty.
Old.
They're old.
They're
old. So let's just say that they get called to the great beyond. Which, by the way, Secret Service, that was nothing. I'm just suggesting natural, nothing else, right? So
just based on age alone, no insider information.
Age alone, yes, nothing here. But let's just say that third party, we end up with RFK. What does that mean? That's a total wild card here.
It is. I think in all three of these scenarios, one thing that's going to matter a lot, but particularly in this third scenario, is what's the makeup of the House and the Senate. Because obviously the president does not pass law. The House and Senate pass law. Now the president has leadership on that law and can set the tone. This one is pretty hard to predict. If you asked me sitting here today, end of April, I would probably bet that Republicans are going to take the Senate. The House may be Democrat controlled, but their margins will be pretty thin. So the real question is, in the House, do we have enough, either a Republican majority, or if it's such a tight Democrat majority that we can pull some votes over to the Republican side? That's going to matter a lot on all of this tax legislation, because you have to get it through Congress.
Okay, so one of the things that I've noticed through the years is that it used to be, this is my opinion only, does not reflect my company or anything like that, but it used to seem to me like the Democratic Party was kind of like herding cats, because there was so much variation in ideologies and hot button issues. And the Republican Party tended to be more unified. And now it seems, from a casual observer, it seems like there's more cracks in the Republican Party than I ever recall. There seems to be more infighting than I really recall, or maybe that infighting is just now transparent. Am I right on that? And how would that affect? How would that affect legislation?
This is actually a pretty exciting time in American politics, even though it is painful to go through, because we are coming into this great resorting of the political parties. And this is not the first time it's happened. Some of our listeners may remember when the South were all Democrats. I mean, Southern Democrats were probably one of the strongest Democratic voting blocs, and over the years that has really transitioned into Republican strongholds. Then we had, out in Colorado, all these places that were very red and now have purpled and now are coming into the Democrat Party. So we know right now Republicans are bleeding college-educated women. Democrats are starting to lose some momentum with blacks, with Hispanics certainly. So what we're really finding is these parties that are being remade. And I think what we're going to see is this kind of, we'll have the Democrats that tend to be the higher income Americans and very progressive Americans, and then maybe a Republican Party more made around working class of all kind of backgrounds, but really around a more populist feel and kind of, the unions. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting time. But what that means is, actually, in a way, presidents have a little probably less power than in the past. Because even if you look at what's happening in the House with the Speaker and everything, the parties are not a voting bloc like they used to be. And so, Congress is going to have to work this out. The president is going to have to try to lead a party that is not necessarily unified behind him. Okay, so one other wild card question then. So let's take RFK off the table, because he's a third-party candidate, and that's never happened. And but both of these gentlemen, again, we were talking about age, which then that really brings into play what kind of impact would there, if something
were to happen, what kind of impact do we know? I don't think we know Trump's running mate, do we? But we know, so as it stands now, it's Kamala on the Democratic side. What do you think?
VPs are going to be important in this because, first of all, regardless of which president is elected, we are looking then at a new set of leaders for the next election.
Yeah.
So that could either be a VP or the parties would have to go through this painful process of it not being the VP, which then you really, to save face, have to have that vice president step down and say, no, I don't want this.
That would be crazy.
It would be crazy.
The only time I guess it's never happened because in Nixon, he kind of got the boot because of.
I know, good fun fact for everyone listening. Only president never elected as president or vice president, Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
Because he was appointed to vice president when Agnew went out and then became president when Nixon
Do you want to know another crazy thing about that for everyone listening? So everybody younger probably thinks of Gerald Ford as like super clumsy because of Chevy Chase's impression. Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, he was like the starting quarterback at Michigan. He was a male model. That guy was a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
And like athlete, I think he either was in the running for the Heisman or won it. Like he was a stud.
I don't know that I want to put this out there, but there is this website called Hottest Heads of State, and it ranks all the presidents in terms of attractiveness when president and attractiveness at the peak of their years. Gerald Ford in his prime, high school, college Gerald Ford, always ranks very highly.
He was a model.
Yeah.
But so I guess it really, it'll be interesting to see who Trump selects as VP. He has to do that pretty soon, doesn't he?
Yeah, but also we are going to see over the next 4 years, no matter who wins, this great jockeying for who become the leading voices of these parties.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're going to need someone new soon. Yeah. And it'll be interesting in the interim, our Constitution very well tested with kind of transfer of power, but I can't imagine that either of these candidates is going to make it through 4 years without ever having any health concerns.
Yeah, I don't.
So we'll have to see. It could be an interesting time.
So 2 last questions for you, and then we'll wrap this thing up. What's keeping you up at night? What are you excited about?
Thing that's keeping me up at night, always, 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 is government spending and the difference every year between revenue and spending. The numbers just came out last month. The Congressional Budget Office put out fiscal year 2023 numbers. We had a $1.7 trillion deficit. But what worried me about those numbers is not that the government spends a lot. It's that we took in as a nation $4.4 trillion of revenue, primarily through individual income taxes. And our mandatory spending alone, Social Security, Medicare, interest on the debt, things that Congress doesn't even control. Let's say Congress never passed a single spending bill.
Yep.
Mandatory spending, we spent 4.4. So we are now at the place where just the things that are codified into law, Social Security, Medicare, we use up every dollar we bring in. So the demographics are baked in. We have an aging population, most 65-plus-year-olds anytime in the last 100 years right now. Either something's going to have to give on the spending side, which is unlikely, or taxes are going to have to go up on the revenue side.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because either the spending has to go down. Who goes out? Who can you count on to get out and vote? The older demographic. The older demographic. They're out there in droves. And so if something like that comes up, hey, let's limit how much we're paying you guys. No, thank you.
Yeah. So what excites me? Excites me, because I am a government geek and a retirement geek and an insurance geek. It's interesting. I think by and large, American savers today understand the impact that Washington can have on their retirement far more than they did even just 4 to 8 years ago. And most of the clients that all of us meet with, they're not going to be retired for the next 4 years. So this election is important, but it's not the most important thing. They're going to be retired for the next 10, 20, 30, or 40 years in the future. Yeah. And that means they've got to manage 15 to 20 election cycles. What I think the past couple years have done is help people understand that just because you're happy now, every 2 years we get new government in America, you could be very unhappy the next cycle. Yep. And that instability, while it's not great for the American population, I do think it's helped savers understand that they need to take tax risk and legislative risk seriously in their retirement approach. And that was just really something that wasn't on the lips and minds of savers 10 years ago. And it is now, and advisors are well positioned to help clients through that transition. Like, look, we used to be worried about market risk, which we still are, but we have strategies in place to address that. Income risk, big deal. Now with annuities and guaranteed income, we have some strategies in place that can replace those pensions that went away. Taxes are kind of the final frontier. And we are really at this unique time where, because of this year's election environment, the environment is right for savers to get serious about it, for advisors to help savers protect retirement from tax and legislative risk. And in the long run, that serves us all. We'll all be better off.
And advisors need to get serious about their education around this.
100%. If you are not investing your time and knowledge in understanding tax risk and retirement in 2024, like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
That is the piece.
I know a huge advisor, and one of that we were talking about state of the industry and everything that's going on, and he said the number one thing when it comes to providing alpha, it's tax mitigation. Everything else is that. Everybody can do everything else. But if you can't provide alpha on tax mitigation, you're running behind.
I say all the time, your clients don't really care about how much money they get from their IRA. They care about how much money they can keep from it.
That's right.
And that final piece is taxes. If the government gets a bigger bite of that apple, your client has less income. It doesn't matter what the market did.
Nice. Okay, you know what? With that, we're gonna call that a wrap. You're gonna have to be back. We're gonna catch up with you in a couple months.
I think. Yeah.
And then we'll see what our take on those three things are. Becky, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And for everybody else, don't forget, like, subscribe, follow, leave a comment. If there's any topic you want us to cover, do that. Constructive criticism, love it.
Feel free to let us know if you think Gerald Ford was attractive as a college football player.
Nice. You know. Yeah, we'll have to look. I'll have to look back and see who's the manliest of men in there, and go from there. Becky, thanks. Everybody, thanks. We'll see you all next time.